an exhibition that I co-curated with my colleagues Elizabeth Knott and Claire Fitzgerald. It was an exhibition entitled A Wonder to Behold, Craftsmanship and the Creation of Babylon's Ishtar Gate. And unfortunately, that symposium got canceled, like so many things, due to the pandemic. So the questions that the present symposium seeks to address emerged from my experience working on the ISAW exhibition. Namely, how do we as scholars, archaeologists, educators, and museum professionals imagine and reconstruct ancient monuments and spaces? And how can we be more self-aware about our methods? For example, how have shifting technologies of reconstruction colored our views of the past? And at a foundational level, what is it that we are trying to convey through reconstructions? And what might we be conveying unintentionally? How can we make sure that our reconstructions incorporate multiple voices and are accessible to a broad public in a way that is both historically accurate and visually and sensorially effective and engaging, and at the same time doesn't reiterate colonial narratives? What is the ideal relationship between in situ, museum, and virtual reconstructions? And how can these different modes of reconstruction most effectively work together to redress cultural heritage issues? How can we use reconstructions to share authority with local and descendant Middle Eastern communities and the international community of scholars, as well as earlier excavators who in many cases had the privilege of experiencing firsthand certain aspects of ancient monuments and spaces that may no longer be available today? So those are some of the questions that I hope we can discuss today. I would like to take this opportunity also to extend my gratitude to my colleagues, Elizabeth Knott, Alex Nagel, and Zaid Al-Rawi, who have at various stages helped to shape the direction of today's symposium. And thank you also to Megan Lewis for so generously offering to broadcast today's event on Digital Hammurabi's YouTube channel. So we are also live on YouTube right now. You will see that today's program is organized by pairs of talks on a related topic or methodology, which will hopefully lead to fruitful discussion following each pair of presentations. And I do hope that we will have dialogue with those of you in the audience. So to that end, please use the chat feature to ask questions, make comments, or to alert me that you wish to speak. And I will then ask you to unmute and ask your question. I'm afraid that with so many of you in the audience, I won't be able to track the raise hand feature. So please do use the comments instead, use the chat feature instead. And as a reminder, please do remain muted during the presentations. Thank you. Process. We'll now move on to the last talk before taking questions. So last but not least is Dr. Rojan Kamal Mohammed Amin, who received her bachelor's degree in architectural engineering from the University of Sulaimani in Iraq, and her master's and doctoral degrees in environmental design from the University of Calgary in Canada. She is the founding director of the Digital Cultural Heritage Research Center and co-director of the Cultural Heritage Network at Sulaimani Polytechnic University, where she also teaches and supervises undergraduate and graduate students in the City Planning Engineering Department. Additionally, she is secretary of Rashid International, co-director of the Nahrain Network, and an honorary research fellow at University College London. Her talk today is entitled The New Realities of Architectural Reconstructions and Experiences.
Well, thank you very much for the introduction, Anastasia, and thank you for having me. Hello, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here. So in my talk, I will be focusing on the rising role of augmented reality and virtual reality as what the so-called new realities technology in architectural and historic reconstruction, and in particularly experiencing them. So just to start off, with this discussion, do you see my screen? Okay, here.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. So just to start off with just a brief, recap of what past reconstruction and historic reconstruction is about. So just like from the previous discussion, as you might have noticed, so aside from documentation and research, past reconstruction is actually serving also a bigger purposes in that it is actually stimulating imaginations and deepening engagement with historic space, people, and events. In that regard, it's kind of perceived as a kind of an effective tool for that kind of like stimulating imagination, and as an effective medium for communicating about history and also synthesizing historic data and information. So, and then when we are talking about communication and technology, then the very interesting, phrase by the sentence by Marshall McLuhan, "The medium is the message," kind of comes into my mind when it says it's actually sometimes it's not just what you create, it's also how you present it, and the tools that you are using is also become the message in itself. And so relating that to digital reconstruction of historic sites and spaces, kind of just if you think about it, if you kind of, let's say that you are going through digital reconstruction and now you need to display, to communicate that to researchers and also visitors or viewers. So if you display that in a 2D, in a 2D way, or in a portable or even fixed screens, how would that affect the experience and interaction with it versus if you are when your interaction with those objects or 3D reconstruction are actually through your computer mouse or your touch screen, versus if you are doing it in an augmented reality way, kind of using augmented reality, which can kind of take a new way, making it more interactive in a sense that you can actually take those objects or those historic reconstruction out of virtual world and bringing them onto your hands, such as you can see in this case, or even contextualizing it by having it tagging it, geotagging it into the actual context in real time and in life size. Or even in the case of virtual reality, where you are actually immersing people inside those reconstruction and engaging all this feeling. So in that regard, when we are talking about the use of AR and VR in historic reconstruction, it's not just about how we experience and interact with historic reconstruction, but also what and how we reconstruct them in the first place. So just briefly, for those of you who are not familiar with the technologies, virtual technology, it's actually about full immersion, it's fully immerses viewers in a stimulated 3D environment through specialized glasses, those called VR glasses. But unlike VR, like virtual reality, augmented reality actually does a different things. So instead of actually immersing a user in a computer environment or simulated environment, it actually bring out computer world and overlay it or tag it or augment it into the real view, the actual world and the view of a user. So in that regard, that's why it's considered as a form of mixed reality. But all of these kind of technology are now there are new terminologies and debates about what's whether this is extended reality, or extended reality in itself is also a new technology. But there are generally those discussion about these forms of technologies are actually extending the realities of our world, of our physical world. Given the time limit, I won't be able to go into detail of the project, but in the next slides, I will briefly highlight some projects for reconstruction and experiencing distant and more recent, actually, past in Western Asia. So, so in the rebirth of the Buddha of Bamiyan, using projection-based augmented reality, it was possible to actually bring back the life-size scale of the destructed statue of Buddha. You might remember back in 2000, the world was shocked with footage of Taliban destructing this World Heritage Site. But then with projection-based augmented reality, a team, I think, like it was funded by a couple from China who wanted to bring back the statue to life, and using augmented reality actually made it possible to even contextualize it. So in that regard, geolocating that virtual statue in its actual location, not just seeing it in a computer world or in a simulated environment. So again, this is kind of one of the things that AR can does when it comes to historic reconstruction. And not only that, just reconstructing like, you know, the actual one, but also adding color and also sound to it, basically even animating it. In Arbella Layers Uncovered, which is a proof of concept from my master's, based on the ancient site of Erbil Citadel from, like, you know, in Kurdistan region of Iraq from 6,000 years ago. It's considered like a world's continuously inhabited city, like, you know, that's how they are perceiving it. So you see that by using mobile augmented reality, you know, it was possible to actually not only 3D reconstruct the damaged part, but also align it with the live view of the existing, like existing component or the existing structures that are remaining on the site. So basically, as you can see in the first screen, so if you're on the site and you hold your mobile, but then there are these the indicators are popping up, telling you basically there are something to augment there. And then when you tap on them, then these 3D model reconstruction are actually appearing on the site, making it like giving it the context, the actual context, making use of the actual context of Erbil Citadel instead of actually putting it in a whole computer environment. And then another thing actually that's possible with mobile augmented reality is actually like kind of a different way of reconstruction is actually through using archival photo instead of just using 3D modeling, actually using archival photos from different components and different structures in the Citadel and geotagging it. So basically, if you are if you are within a certain distance, of course, with GPS error, there is a certain error within that. But within that error, you can actually hold your phone and then actually, if you remove your phone, you are actually seeing the actual gate. But if you bring it back, then you are seeing the archival photo geotagged on the existing gate, kind of giving it a context and making it like a time machine where you are actually able to see the past and present now. And then in the Talk to Sarai, which is kind of a mobile AR project that we are now actually redeveloping as part one of our work of our center. It's kind of, again, we are using mobile augmented reality to reconstruct the history and the events of the iconic Sarai building, which is kind of considered one of the most iconic building in the modern city of Soleimani. So here you see by using a different approach of reconstruction, the technology enables us actually to reconstruct it through like cognitive reconstruction, through the oral history and recounts of eyewitnesses from like historical characters from that era. It's kind of making it actually possible to bring those characters back to life and have them talk about the different events and different history of that particular building. So the way it works, if you hold your mobile against any of those characters that I just showed, which are like, you know, all these are archival photos, they are not staged photos. So this is like, you know, this is one of the female leaders from the colonial era, you know, where she talks about how she started the first school, and then giving you also some recounts that relate to some of the events that was happening in or around Sarai building, kind of creating that mental image about the like history and reconstruction, regardless of just visualizing it in image, but also through words, using that through words. And so then she starts talking to you as of like in first person interpretation, and we are using historical empathy to actually emphasize that engagement. And then in the reconstruction of Pasha Kora Castle, which is kind of a project by a group of my students, they are like, you know, this is for a remote. They are looking into actually how to transfer this, you know, not only reconstruct it for the sake of documentation, but also create a e-tourism, electronic tourism experience based on this remote and endangered actually site, just because of like negligence as well as because of its location, which is not accessible. So with AR and VR, it's possible to actually not just see those experiences, like see the castle, like anywhere, basically like on your desk, for example, at home, or even getting inside it, such as in a case of a virtual reality where we are creating a stimulated environment, where you can actually go inside it and see it for yourself, even if you are not in Dukan or if you are outside even the country. But then we are also now, again, taking that approach of reconstruction as if you can actually use text and words and stories for actually creating, reconstructing history. We are actually adding in the next phase, actually, we are adding kind of human guides as a, like, you know, human guide into that, and even experts, you know, who have been videotaped in front of chroma key, like green screens, and then adding them to that virtual environment now, who can talk about, like, you know, instead of actually rebuilding the building, because, you know, when it comes to historic reconstruction, sometimes there are debates. Oh, this wall was like this, not like that. Experts are debating. Now you can, instead of actually visualizing it, actually having the experts having those debates and discussion there, or even having human guide take you through different parts of it. And then in Nobody's Listening VR experience, which is kind of a project from Yazda and Surround Vision, that we are actually helping with assessing it. It's like, it's about more recent history of, you know, of of Iraq, but then using virtual reality kind of technology, it's actually enabling viewers to actually get into the sight and sound and stories of the tragedies experience and the genocide experienced by the Yazidis. And, you know, through it, you can visualize it anywhere, basically expose users to the destruction of cultural heritage of, you know, very precious cultural heritage for Yazidis, or even immersing them in the destruction that was left, or even the event that was taking place at the time, through recounts of two Yazidi characters and also an ISIS fighter, and of course getting exposed to different experiences. In summary, a growing body of research are actually showing the effectiveness of the realities technologies that I call, like, augmented reality and virtual reality, for cultural heritage presentation and engagement, including how we reconstruct, experience, and interact with past buildings, spaces, people, and events. The key features of AR and VR actually are extending the current reality of past reconstruction and how we are experiencing them, and opening new doors for new imaginations and multisensory experiences. And thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you so much, Rojan. It's exciting to see so many new stimulating ways that we can experience the past. It's really wonderful. And to that end, I'd like to read one of the comments in the chat from Divya, who says, I love the idea of giving equity to various documented historical mental images when talking about visualizations. So it sounds like a really productive way to present different perspectives, and, as you said, things that scholars you know, aren't sure about, or there's different interpretations. Let's see here. Okay, there's a question for Mustafa. Do you think that the 3D reconstruction could be used to reproduce completely destroyed areas of the monument that could be integrated into the restoration of the stele? And a follow-up question would be, do you know how much of the stele is missing? Have you been able to get a sense of how much is actually destroyed?
Okay, thank you for the question. Yes, the 3D model can be used in the restoration of the stela, specifically the fragment containing the original cuneiform signs, by comparing them with the model.
And do you know how much of the stela has been completely destroyed? Were you able to collect kind of all the pieces, or how much is, or is that uncertain?
The destructive, about 800% on all of stela.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, are there any other questions for our speakers as we come to the end, or maybe speakers would like to respond to one another? in any way. There's a few comments. If you guys would like to unmute yourselves and feel free to speak. There is also another question from Elizabeth Knott. A question for both of the last speakers. I would like to know more about your experiences with using various technologies in terms of accessibility and ease of use. If you could speak to that, please.
Okay. When it comes to accessibility, actually, I have done some research because normally VR is known for providing more immersive experiences, and it's more solo. You could do collaborative, but normally kind of that's where it goes. And it's more expensive to actually maintain and even develop and things like that. But then when it comes to mobile technology, you know, in Iraq, there is a high rate of, you know, smartphone owners. And that's why in particularly in the context of Iraq, we are actually more focusing on mobile phones. It's just in terms of accessibility. And we use mobile phones because people are used to their own mobile phones. They are not using a new devices. So that's also a usability kind of component where you are actually tackling. And then, but then when it comes to the whole designing such experience, you know, these kind of projects are normally interdisciplinary by nature. We are having lots of challenges with sometimes, you know, bringing people to understand even what we are trying to do, just trying to think spatially, because this is not just about thinking about, it's not like a VR, you are thinking all inside the virtual world, or, you know, VR, that's how you think in virtual reality, or a video or animation. No, you are thinking in the real and then virtual world, kind of combining the two together. You have to think about it comes about developing an exhibition, that's how we approach it. But then we are actually stepping very well in that regard. But then again, with its challenges with understanding, and then with technical kind of people who develop for these platforms is kind of also another challenge. But in my team now, we have developed capacity to do everything in-house, which is kind of something that has changed significantly, because when I returned from Canada, and one of the big challenges how to advance my research area in something that's very new, and in fact not many people was understanding, especially that with my architecture background, so many people have and still ask me what I have to do with this kind of works.
Thank you. And Mustafa, can you speak a bit about how you came to use the technology that you're using? Did you try out different technologies, or did you just decide to use this one for a particular reason?
Okay, thank you for the question. My friend's translator with me.
Take your time.
مصطفى، هي تقول انت تقول انت شلون يعني شلون استخدمت التكنولوجيا يعني ببحثك، و يعني ايش تتوقع فائده هاي التكنولوجيا وجودها بالعراق؟ خبرتك باستخدام التكنولوجيا في علم الاثار، وليش استخدمت التكنولوجيا؟
استخدام التكنولوجيا بعلم الاثار جدا يسهل عملنا من خلال توظيف تقنيات الكمبيوتر في مجال عملنا بالآثار، تحديدا برمجيات معالجة الصور والرسم الهندسي. أنا أشتغل على برنامج الفوتوشوب بشكل جيد جدا، وأقوم بمعالجة الصور.
Yeah. He says that using technology is very significant in scientific research, and particularly in archaeology. And he says that he is a professional user of Photoshop and other softwares. So he intends to apply his skills with technology on his scientific research in his MA project.
Wonderful. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Do you have another question?
Let's see here. We have a comment from Yarub Al-Obeidi, who says, I really hope some points from the symposium become shareable with UNESCO for their work on the Al-Nouri Mosque in Mosul. I believe it will be a great opportunity for them to expand their vision about reconstructing the past. All right, are there any other questions for our speakers? If not, I think we'll end it right there. We've already gone over time. My apologies for keeping everyone for so long, but it has been a really stimulating discussion. Thank you all so much for your fantastic talks. Thank you for being here and sharing your work. It was wonderful meeting some of you whom I've never met before, wonderful to see others whom I know. So thank you very much and enjoy the rest of your day.